Hello, everyone. My name is Jody Glean, and I am a member of the Greater Toronto Area Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I'd like to welcome you to our March edition of our Community Corner, where we take time to spotlight and highlight key folks within our community, engage in important work in activism and advocacy to continue increasing inclusion, to continue increasing awareness, and just highlighting the very needs of the community members surrounding us. I am so honored to be joined by my colleague and friend, T. Dukes. And so to begin, T, I'd first like to ask if you could introduce yourself to the viewers and share more about your role and responsibilities at the University of Toronto Mississauga.
Absolutely, miigwech Jody, Ani, Minigajab, T. Indigenous Niisaachewan Anishinaabe Nation, Treaty 3 Ndojaba, and now Treaty 13 Ndojaba, Anishinaabe Kwayandao, Biju Nedodem. Good morning, everyone. Hello. First, I would just like to say miigwech to Jody for really taking the time to connect with me and to share my experiences with you and my story with you. I'm a very proud Anishinaabe Kwe, Anishinaabe woman, so my pronouns are she and her. I am from a very small Northwestern Ontario town, Kenora, Ontario, but my community is called Niisaachewan Anishinaabe Nation, which is just 20 minutes north of Kenora. But I've been living here in Toronto in the Big Smoke, the GTA, going on, oh my goodness, 16 years. So I now call Treaty 13 where I live, so North Mississauga, where I also live and where I work at UTM. I'm also a very proud member, a Lynx clan member, and I try to carry out those roles and responsibilities of that clan membership through my personal, but more importantly, my professional life. And I'll talk a little bit more about that today as well. So thank you again for having me. I'm super excited about this.
Thank you so much, T. And so for those of you who may, as we learn more about T, but want to read more about her, know that her bio will be posted on our website as well. There's so much amazing work that she's been engaged in. And so we're excited to have her today. So T, moving along in regards to learning more about your journey, can you share key highlights in your personal and or your professional journey that guided you to your role at the University of Toronto Mississauga as the first Indigenous Initiative Assistant Director?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple. So of course, like as the Assistant Director of Indigenous Initiatives, I'm responsible for the administration, coordination, development, and implementation of Indigenous initiatives at UTM, while also overseeing the administration operations of the UTM Indigenous Center. So there's this point where at times I even ask myself, I'm like, how did I get here? And really taking those opportunities to self-reflect on my own journey. I do have to recognize and acknowledge that within that journey, and of course being a part of the Indigenous community, that I grew up learning that there's hardships in our community that we have to overcome many obstacles because of our initial and ongoing interactions with government, and how we have to at some point had to follow very specific restrictions and all of these things, and also not even talking about overcoming inequities and injustices that we experience as Indigenous people. And I have to acknowledge that I grew up knowing those things, but I also grew up in a place where on my community with my family, and my parents were so they really wanted to protect myself and my sisters from all of these things that we knew we could see within, not only in our own communities, but with our family members. And I'm talking about really filling those hardships with negative coping mechanisms, right? So I have to acknowledge my own privilege in a way of how our parents, my parents, like they really sheltered us and protected us from those things while encouraging us to really go out there and learn and educate ourselves. But I really do have to acknowledge that I'll have a lot of privilege even within the Indigenous community, because I know that's not everyone else's story given their own experiences. So I do have to acknowledge that. Some of the key highlights for me, it really does go back to also like my connections and understandings with like the education system, to be honest, Jody. Like it's been a roller coaster ride. And the reason why I was so passionate about really wanting to be in a position where I'm supporting community in academic institutions is because I was in a situation where I had a guidance counselor at one point who just gave up on me. Um, and they were not shy to show actual their actions, their interactions with me, that they're giving up on me. And it was because I'm an Indigenous student. And I was very lucky that I had one Indigenous guidance counselor and an Indigenous educator, a teacher, who really advocated for me, who was really there to demonstrate that they're not giving up on me and that they're willing to help me, because I was actually at risk of not graduating with my peers. So from then on, I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be a person where I don't, I want to support our community, especially in navigating their academic journey. And I didn't want another student to experience what I experienced in that way. So how can I be a part of the development of creating community in these very incredible academic institutions that, unfortunately, Jody, like they weren't built for Indigenous people. They weren't built for BIPOC people. They like it's so how can I actually, I guess, reconstruct that system within, right? And oftentimes we kind of have to be that person. We have to be that champion for community. And it's hard. It's hard work, right? It's not easy. So it's really it. I want to say it's a both personal, like a very personal connection to where I'm at right now. And of course, on the professional side, in terms of truth and reconciliation, and I know this is very controversial, but I believe as a community that we can get there. We can, but it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of relationship building. And I want to be a part of that work because I do believe in it. And I know that's very controversial to say because some community members would probably very much disagree with my outlook on it, but I believe that we can get there and I want to really contribute to that work. So I'm so grateful that I'm in a position that allows me to do that. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for that reflection. And as we talk about this position and what this position allows you to do, wanting to invite, if you could share with us 3 lessons you have learned about yourself as you've journeyed in this space of leadership. And when we think about leadership, and I would say that the very essence of your previous reflection also highlighted the need for community relationship representation, but the word allyship is floating within, right? So if we had allies along the way, as we journey in these spaces, what would it mean? So the questions being, what are 3 lessons you've learned about yourself as you've journeyed in this space of leadership? And then what does allyship look like to you within this space of leadership now that you're navigating these spaces?
Yes, absolutely. So I'd say the first lesson that I learned about myself in this journey around, that journey to leadership is definitely one, because you're essentially in a position of power, right? And like I said, community is looking to you to really advocate, to support, to protect, to be that champion for them, especially in spaces where they might not be in, at the table, right? Making very important decisions. So what I've really I would really say that demonstrating that you're truly listening to community, and more importantly, that you're not just listening, but that it's actually followed with action. It's really important. I often hear sometimes where community will raise an issue and it's never really followed up. It's acknowledged, but we don't really actually see like what the follow up is with that, but more importantly, the relationship building that could come from it. So that's number one. Number two, and this is going to be so funny, Jody, but I love RuPaul's Drag Race, and I constantly listen to RuPaul Charles and like these like just amazing little life lessons. And one of the things that he says is really looking for ways to overcome your inner saboteur. And of course, like your inner saboteur really being like that voice in your head that really is looking for your fears and your insecurities and feeding off of them. So I think it's really important to know that we all carry that voice, and not always to give into it, not never to give into it, and constantly just working on strategies or positive coping mechanisms or tactics to identify it, but more importantly to like fight it. So I would, especially like where I'm at now, feeling like a fish out of water sometimes. So really just recognizing that you can overcome your inner saboteur. And then the third one would be, this is going to be really bizarre as well, but I say this to myself all the time, is trying to not take things too personally, because they could actually slow down the work. And my approach to that is really just, if there's an issue, not taking it personally, but really addressing it head on. And also, like for myself, just reminding myself about the best approach in addressing those issues. So the reason why sometimes I say in friendship a lot is so the person knows that I'm coming to them with kindness and with honesty, and I'm really looking for a solution that is both beneficial for both parties. So sometimes you'll notice I'll say in friendship, that's usually the sign where I'm like, I'm going to tell you something that might not work out really great for us, but we're going to get past it, right? Because I do want to maintain a positive friendship relationship with you, even though I might have to tell you something that's difficult, right? So those are some of the things that I try to carry. And then, of course, what does allyship look like to me? For me, I think it really does come down to ensuring that I'm in a space, and myself being like speaking as a community member, that I'm with other people that I not only identify themselves as allies, but again, it's in that action piece. I could see it. I know that if there's an issue where I need someone else to stand up for me, that they're going to do it and they're not going to hesitate. And some of the things that really connect to my understanding of allyship is Cindy Blackstock's definition of moral courage. So if you see something that's wrong and someone needs your help or they need you to intervene, that you don't hesitate, that you actually do it. You help that person. And you're not weighing the options. You're not saying things like, "Ugh, it's none of my business," or "this puts me in a bad situation. This makes me look bad," or "I might lose my job." Or so like when you see an injustice, when you see something that's really wrong, like I'm looking to my allies to implement that moral courage that we're all born with, but we tend to naturally, as we get older, we're able to weigh the consequences. We're able to kind of like think about things, but I'm really just looking for those allies to kind of carry that moral courage through with us and to really like demonstrate it. So don't just say you're an ally, show me that you're an ally. And last but not least, because this is a pet peeve of mine, don't take up too much space in in BIPOC spaces. It drives me. I can't. Like sometimes you'll have someone like their best intentions, but they're taking up a lot of space. So that's the other thing that I'd like to share about allyship.
Thank you so much for that. So in that spirit, share with me if I can invite this question on joy. So what brings you joy in doing this work?
So my background is very much from grassroots level. Coming into this position, like I said, fish out of water. And the previous position being nonprofit work and for the Friendship Center movement was everything had a cultural context to it. You know, if you were to create like a policy and procedure, there was always this, what's the cultural context of what you're developing? And it's a huge eye opener for me because now I look at everything that way. Like if we're having a conversation, if we're like, what are the teachings, the foundational teachings that I know that I need to share in this moment of learning or sharing my roles and responsibilities. And what brings me joy about this is the community pieces, is that it really allows me to be in a position where I'm supporting community as much as possible. I'm advocating for them. I'm bringing up issues that they might not be comfortable bringing up in different spaces. And I know I mentioned this in my introduction, but it also allows me to fulfill my roles and responsibilities as a Lynx clan member. And being a Lynx clan member, our primarily like main function is really to provide and to protect community at all costs. So I selfishly, it really allows me to fulfill meeting community just needs and support while also really fulfilling those traditional roles and responsibilities. So I'm really grateful that I'm able to do that within this work, and especially now working within an institution that doesn't come from a grassroots place. So it's something that I really like to hang on to, and I acknowledge it frequently actually in my introduction. So I'm so grateful for this work because I could still do that.
Thank you so much for that. That's beautiful. Thank you for that reflection. And so as we come to a close, can you share one affirmation or a quote that inspires you, particularly during challenging times, that you wish to share with our viewers?
Yes, there's one quote that I connect to consistently. Unfortunately, I don't know who has said this quote. It was identified as anonymous, but I would like to share this. Indigenous people are not a people without hope. We have overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles in our long and painful histories because our Creator has given us the tools necessary for survival. We must not be shy to use them. And the reason why I say that, especially during these very challenging times, is because I've been reading and listening to so many things, and specifically around how the pandemic has impacted Indigenous communities specifically. And what's interesting is you even hear like specific knowledge keepers saying, you know, this isn't the first time we've gone through this and we could get through it. And we have, and we're still here. And I think sometimes we forget that. We forget that in our lives, like we have those painful histories. We continue to overcome these adversities in our life, and really why are we still able to do that? And it's because of all those gifts. It's because of all of the community that we have behind us, that those important roles and responsibilities, the joy that you were mentioning earlier, we have all of those things. And I think sometimes, especially during these challenging times now, it could be so easy to forget that. So it's just really important for me to remind myself that we do have those skills. We have the necessary those gifts and teachings and culture and connection and language to ensure our survival, so to speak, or how we're continuing to live the good life. To live minimumataziwin is what we say in the language, is to live a good life. So I think it's just important that we take time to remind ourselves of that.
We have the tools and we must not be scared to use them.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your beautiful reflection. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your sharing. Truly appreciated. And to the viewers, we hope that you've learned something and that you're walking away with something that continues to inspire you. Everybody, please do take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.